Hello, my name is Ethan Cooper, 32 years old. I live in a tiny rented room on the outskirts of Millville, New Jersey, where the smell of machine oil from the nearby repair shop clings to my clothes like an uninvited friend. By day, I'm a mechanic buried in the growling guts of machines, my hands stained with grease. By night, I deliver food or work shifts at the gas station, watching cars speed by under the flickering neon lights. My life is an endless loop, like the old wall clock in my room, ticking, never pausing long enough for me to catch my breath. I'm sitting here, telling you about my life, on a dusty plastic chair in a rented room just big enough for a single bed, a small table, and a chipped wardrobe. Outside, the October wind howls, whistling through the window that never quite seals shut. I just got back from work, still wearing my oil-stained uniform. My head is pounding like it's been hit with a hammer, but I don't have time to care. On the table sits a cold cup of coffee and a half-eaten sandwich from breakfast. Millville is a small town where everyone knows each other, but no one really cares. Cracked asphalt roads, faded wooden houses, and endless cornfields, that's all this place has. I grew up here in a small house about 10 miles from my current room. That house is old now, with loose shingles and peeling walls, but I still remember summer days running around the yard, my laughter mixing with my younger brother Zach's as he trailed me like a shadow. Lily, my baby sister, was too young then, lying in her crib giggling whenever I made funny faces. Those memories are beautiful, but they're like a faded painting, only faint outlines remaining. I'm the eldest of 3 siblings. My father, Frank Cooper, used to be a plumber until his back gave out. Now he lives on a small pension and meager savings. My mother, Ellen, works as a cashier at the local supermarket, but she's often off due to joint pain. They're not bad people, my parents. They did everything they could to raise us in that cramped house, where the smell of fried potato cakes and the constant hum of the TV blended into an indelible memory. But their love was strange. A kind of love that always left me feeling like I was on the outside looking in. I don't resent them, honestly, but sometimes in those rare quiet moments when I'm alone in this rented room, I wonder, has anyone ever seen me as a person, not just a machine that fixes things? Has anyone ever asked what I want, what I dream of, or simply how I feel? I push those thoughts away as quickly as I wipe oil off my hands. Complaining doesn't solve anything. The work is still there, and I have to keep going. My job isn't easy. During the day, I'm at the repair shop where the smell of oil and the clang of metal drown out everything else. I like the work, really. There's something satisfying about tearing a machine apart, finding the problem and bringing it back to life. But it drains me. On long days, I'm hunched over for hours, wrench in hand, my back aching, my eyes blurring from focus. Once I worked myself to exhaustion, my fingers trembling as I tightened a bolt, and Hank, my boss, had to pull me outside, hand me a bottle of water and say, "You're not a machine, Ethan. Take a break." But rest is something I can't afford. Beyond the shop, I have night shifts. The gas station is a different world, quiet but lonely. Neon lights flicker, trucks rumble on the highway, and strangers' faces pass by. I stand behind the counter, counting the minutes, trying to stay alert. Some nights I look in the bathroom mirror at the gas station and see my sunken eyes, dark circles like they were drawn with charcoal. I tell myself, just get through tonight, Ethan. Tomorrow will be better. But tomorrow never is. My family doesn't know how tired I am. They don't ask. Once, Lily called, her voice bubbling with excitement about a new art project. "Ethan, I need $200 for special paint. Can you lend me some? I promise I'll pay you back." I sent the money right away, even though it meant cutting back on lunches for the week. Zach is different. He doesn't ask for money outright, but whenever his car breaks down, he calls me. "Ethan, can you fix this car? I've got an important client meeting this week." I drive over, work until midnight to get it running, and Zach just slaps my shoulder, says, "Thanks, you're a lifesaver," and speeds off, never looking back. I used to think that if I kept helping, one day they'd notice. One day my parents would look at me and say, "Ethan, you've done so well." But that day never came. Instead, they praised Zach for his vision and Lily for her talent. Me? I'm the logistics guy, the faint shadow in the background keeping everything running. My health started failing a few months ago. The headaches got worse, like someone was hammering my temples. I'm constantly exhausted, even though I try to drink coffee and eat better. Once I nearly collapsed while fixing an excavator, my hands shaking so badly I dropped my wrench. Hank looked at me, worried. "You okay, Ethan? You look like you're about to keel over." I laughed it off, said, "Just tired, I'm fine." But I knew I wasn't. I could feel my body betraying me bit by bit. I hide my illness. I don't want my family to worry, or rather I don't want them to see me as a burden. I take painkillers, try to sleep more on the rare days off, but it doesn't help much. Every morning I look in the mirror and see a 32-year-old man who looks over 40. My skin is ashen, my eyes dull, and my smile, if I even remember how to smile, disappeared long ago. That day was a Friday, one I'll never forget. I started my morning shift at the repair shop as usual. The excavator I'd been working on all week still wouldn't start, and Hank was losing patience. "Ethan, you've got to get this fixed by the end of the week," he growled, pointing at the heap of metal like it was my fault. I nodded, bent over to work, sweat dripping down my forehead despite the cold. The headache came back, worse this time, like someone was drilling into my temples. I swallowed 2 more ibuprofen, hoping it would help. At noon, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. "Ethan, can you come fix the washing machine? It's broken again." I sighed, said I'd come after my shift. But before hanging up, she added, "Oh, Zach just closed a big house sale. We're having a dinner tonight to celebrate. You'll come, right?" I nodded, though I knew I wouldn't have time. I hung up, feeling like a rock was crushing my chest. A party for Zach. Once again, I was just the guy who fixes the washing machine. Late that evening, I drove to my parents' house, toolbox in hand. The house was the same as ever, but every time I stepped inside, I felt smaller. My parents were in the living room laughing with Zach. Lily sat in the corner, scrolling on her phone, earbuds in. No one noticed me come in. I quietly went to the laundry room, took apart the washing machine, and found the problem, a clogged hose. I fixed it in under an hour, wiped my hands on a dirty rag, and walked back to the living room. "Washer's done," I said. My mom nodded. "Thanks, Ethan." Zach didn't even look up from his story about a client. Lily gave a half smile, then went back to her phone. I stood there looking at my family, feeling like a stranger. I wanted to say something, to scream that I was tired, that I needed to be seen, to be heard. But I didn't. I just nodded, grabbed my toolbox, and left. As the door closed behind me, I heard their laughter, as if I'd never been there. On the drive home, the headache returned, worse than ever. I pulled over, rested my head on the steering wheel, and tried to breathe. My hands were shaking, and for a moment I thought I couldn't go on. But I took a deep breath, started the car, and drove back to my room. I didn't know that just a few days later everything would collapse, and I'd have to face the brutal truth about my family, myself, and my life. I never thought of myself as someone who'd break easily. For 32 years I've lived like a machine, fixing, supporting, carrying the load, never stopping. But my body, it turns out, isn't made of steel. It betrayed me on a cold Tuesday night under the neon lights of the gas station when everything went dark and I collapsed, unable to comprehend what was happening. That night started like any other. I stood behind the counter counting change, listening to the rumble of trucks on the highway. The headache had become a constant companion, but tonight it was worse, like someone was pounding my temples with a hammer. I swallowed 2 more ibuprofen, though I knew they'd stopped working. My vision blurred and my hands trembled as I handed a credit card back to a customer. "You okay?" he asked, his voice skeptical. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Fine, just tired." But I wasn't fine. I felt like an old car, engine rattling, on the verge of breaking down. Then it hit like a wave. I was wiping down the counter, trying to stay alert, when a wave of dizziness crashed over me. The room tilted, the radio in the corner warped into a distorted hum, and I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. I gripped the counter, trying to steady myself, but my legs wouldn't obey. "Just sit down," I told myself, but before I could do anything, the floor rushed up and I collapsed. Everything went black. I vaguely heard someone shout, "Call 911," and then nothing. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, harsh white light stabbing my eyes. The smell of antiseptic was overpowering, and a steady beeping came from the machines beside me. A nurse stood at the foot of the bed, jotting something on a chart. I tried to sit up, but my body felt like lead. "You're awake," she said softly. "Don't move too much. You passed out at the gas station. We're running tests." Panic hit me, but not for myself. I thought about work. Hank would lose it if I didn't finish fixing that excavator. Who'd cover the gas station shift tonight? And money, I didn't have good insurance. How would I pay for this? I asked the nurse, my voice hoarse. "How long do I have to stay here?" She smiled, but her eyes were worried. "The doctor will talk to you soon. Just rest for now." The doctor came a few hours later, a middle-aged man with round glasses and a calm voice. He sat beside my bed holding a stack of charts. "Ethan, I'm Dr. Patel. We have your test results. You're in acute kidney failure. Your kidneys are functioning very poorly and you need to start dialysis immediately." I stared at him, my mind blank. Kidney failure? I didn't understand. I was only 32. I was healthy. Or at least I thought I was. "Dialysis?" I repeated, my voice weak. Dr. Patel explained slowly, as if he knew I was reeling. My kidneys had been failing for a while, likely from overwork, poor diet, and chronic stress. Without regular dialysis, I wouldn't last long. And within a year, I'd need a kidney transplant, or I'd die. The word die rang in my head like a bell. I wasn't afraid of death, not exactly, but I was terrified of leaving things unfinished. My job, my family, the responsibilities I'd carried my whole life. I asked the doctor, "A transplant. How do I get a kidney?" He looked at me, his voice gentle. "Family members are often the best option. They can be tested for compatibility. If that doesn't work, you'll be put on a waiting list, but it could take years." Family. The word tightened my chest. I thought of my parents, Zach, Lily. Surely they'd help me. They were my family. They had to help, right? I was moved to a shared hospital room where 4 other patients lay, each with their own story. Holding my phone with trembling hands, I called my mom. The phone rang endlessly, but no one answered. I tried again, then texted, "Mom, I'm in the hospital. I have kidney failure. Need to talk urgently." I waited. 1 hour, 2 hours, no reply. I called Zach, but got his voicemail. Lily didn't pick up either. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling like the whole world was slipping away from me. Finally, the next morning, my mom texted back. A short message. "Ethan, are you okay? We're busy preparing for Lily's art exhibition. I'll call you tonight." I read it over and over, unable to believe my eyes. Okay? I was in the hospital, facing death, and they were busy with Lily's exhibition. I tried to tell myself they didn't understand the severity. Maybe when I explained they'd come, they'd worry, they'd help. But they didn't come. The second day, the third, then an entire week passed. I lay in the hospital room, my body weakening with each dialysis session. It felt like a giant straw was sucking the life out of me. The dialysis machine hummed beside me, and every time the needle pierced my arm, I clenched my teeth to keep from screaming. I waited for my family, but all I got were a few half-hearted texts. Zach sent one. "Hang in there, bro, busy with client meetings." Lily wrote, "Ethan, I'm so worried, but I'm preparing for my exhibition. I'll visit next week." My parents didn't send anything else. I started checking social media, though I knew I shouldn't. Zach posted a photo of himself on a Miami beach, grinning brightly next to a stranger, captioned, "Life is for living." Lily shared pictures of her exhibition. Her scribbled paintings hung in a small gallery with the status, "Dreams are coming true." I stared at those photos, my hand gripping the phone tightly, feeling like someone was crushing my heart. They were living, laughing, dreaming, while I lay here alone, fighting to survive. On the 8th day, I decided to call again. I needed them to understand. I needed them here. I called my mom, and this time she answered. "Ethan, how are you doing?" she asked, her voice rushed. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, I have acute kidney failure. I'm on dialysis, and I need a kidney transplant within a year. I need the family to get tested to see if anyone's a match, or at least help with dialysis costs." I paused, waiting. I hoped she'd panic, say they'd come right away, that they'd do anything to save me. But my mom was silent. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but cold. "Ethan, this is complicated. Your dad and I aren't young anymore, and our health isn't great. Zach's building his career, and Lily needs to focus on her art. We have to think about their futures." It felt like a knife to the chest. Their futures? What about me? Didn't I have a future? I wanted to scream, to ask why I didn't matter, but I only whispered, "So what am I supposed to do, Mom?" She sighed. "You're strong, Ethan. You always find a way. We'll try to help, but now's not the time." Then she hung up. I lay there, the phone slipping from my hand, tears spilling out despite my efforts to hold them back. For the first time in my life, I felt completely invisible. I'd spent my entire life helping them, paying bills, fixing cars, covering tuition. But when I needed them most, they turned their backs. I began to see the harsh truth. I wasn't part of the family, not in the way I thought. I was a shadow, the one in the background, keeping things running, but never truly seen. For 32 years, I'd lived to please them, to prove I was worth something. But now, lying in a hospital bed, it was clear they didn't need me, not Ethan, just what I could do for them. Life after that became a string of dark days. Dialysis 3 times a week, 4 hours each session, felt like an endless punishment. The costs ate through my savings. I couldn't work night shifts anymore. The doctor forbade it, saying my body couldn't handle it. Hank, my boss at the repair shop, was sympathetic, but I knew he couldn't keep me on long if I couldn't pull my weight. I survived on my meager wages, cutting out everything. No eating out, no new clothes, nothing. My already run-down rented room felt even colder, a constant reminder that I was sinking to rock bottom. My family drifted further away. At first, they called, asking superficial questions. But when I could no longer send them money, the calls dwindled. I sank into despair. Some nights, after dialysis, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about death. It wasn't as scary as I'd expected. Maybe dying would be easier than living, easier than facing the truth that my family didn't need me. But then I thought of others. Hank, who kept me on at the shop despite my weakness. The silver-haired truck driver I'd see at the gas station, who always asked if I was okay. They weren't family, but they saw me. And I told myself I can't give up yet. I started looking for options. I asked Dr. Patel about the kidney transplant waiting list, but he said it could take 3 or 4 years. I researched charity programs, but most required complicated paperwork I didn't have the energy to tackle. I even considered selling my old truck, but it was my only way to get to work. Every day I fought myself, trying not to let the emotional pain overpower the physical pain. I sat in the dialysis waiting room, my body exhausted, my mind a tangled mess, thinking this might be all I'd ever have. A life hanging by a thread, waiting for a miracle that would never come. But miracles, it turns out, do exist. Mine came in the form of a man in a gray suit with confident steps and a smile I couldn't forget, even though 8 years had passed since we last met. That morning started like any other in the hospital. I sat on a hard plastic chair, clutching a weak cup of coffee from the vending machine, trying to keep my eyes from closing. The hum of dialysis machines from the next room mixed with the murmurs of other patients in the waiting area. I just finished a dialysis session, my body drained of energy, every step heavy. I'd grown used to this feeling, the relentless fatigue, the dull ache in my back, and the foggy mind that could barely think beyond how to survive the day. My phone buzzed, the screen showing Hank's number, my boss at the repair shop. I frowned, wondering if he was calling to push me to return to work or to tell me I was fired. I answered, my voice weak. "Hank, what's up?" "Ethan, you okay?" Hank's voice came through, not gruff like usual, but full of concern. "This morning a guy came to the shop looking for you. Looked rich, wearing a suit, driving a fancy car, not the kind of person you see in Millville. He asked about you, wanted to know where you were. I told him you were in the hospital on dialysis. He didn't say much, just thanked me and left. Thought you should know." I froze, my mind reeling. Who would look for me? I had no close friends, no one beyond the guys at the shop and a few patients I'd met at the hospital. "Did he give a name?" I asked, my voice trembling. Hank hesitated. "Sounded like Jasper something. Jasper Reed, maybe?" My heart pounded. Jasper Reed. The name hit me like a stone dropped into a still lake, stirring memories I'd buried long ago. Jasper was my childhood friend, the one I grew up with in Millville, in weed-choked alleys and summer days running by the muddy Run River. Back then, Jasper was a smart but poor kid, his family living in a rundown trailer, always scraping by. I'd helped him plenty, sharing lunches, lending textbooks, even standing up for him when older kids bullied him. But the biggest memory, the one I'd never forget, was 8 years ago, when Jasper came to me with bright eyes and a crazy idea. "Ethan, I've got a business plan," he'd said, his voice brimming with passion. "A tech app to connect small businesses with local customers. I just need startup capital. If it works, it'll change everything." I looked at Jasper, saw the determination in his eyes, and I believed in him. I emptied my savings, the money I'd set aside for an old car, and even borrowed from a few friends to lend him $7,000. "You'll do it," I said, clapping his shoulder. "I believe in you." Jasper hugged me, promising to pay me back tenfold. But then he left Millville, and I never heard from him again. I assumed he'd failed, like so many dreams in this town. And now Hank was saying Jasper was looking for me. A wealthy man in a suit driving a fancy car. I couldn't believe it. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, my mind in chaos. "Thanks, Hank," I whispered, then hung up. I stared out the waiting room window where faint sunlight filtered through, wondering if I was dreaming. Less than an hour later, I heard confident footsteps echoing down the hall. I looked up and my heart seemed to stop. A man walked in, tall, wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit, hair neatly combed, a gleaming watch on his wrist. But the smile, that smile hadn't changed. It was Jasper Reed, my friend, but no longer the scrawny kid from before. He was now a successful man with confident eyes and a presence that lit up the waiting room. "Ethan," he called, his voice warm, stepping closer. I stood, my legs trembling, unsure of what to say. "Jasper?" I whispered. He nodded, pulling me into a tight hug. I could smell his expensive cologne and feel the strength in his arms, but what choked me up was the sincerity in his eyes. "I've been looking for you everywhere," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Hank told me about your condition. Ethan, why didn't you tell me?" I shook my head at a loss for words. Tell him what? That I'd lost everything? That my family had turned their backs? That I was fighting to survive each day? I only whispered, "I didn't know where you were, Jasper. I thought you'd forgotten me." He looked at me, his eyes full of hurt. "Forgotten you? Ethan, you're the one who gave me the chance to have today. Without your $7,000, without your belief in me, I'd never have built my company." Jasper pulled me to sit down, and he told me his story. After leaving Millville, he used the money I gave him to develop his app, and it succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. His company was now worth tens of millions, with offices in New York and San Francisco. Jasper had become a millionaire, but he said what made him proudest was repaying those who'd helped him. "I've been looking for you for years," he said. "I wanted to pay you back, to thank you, but now seeing you like this, Ethan, I'm not letting you go through this alone." I told him everything, about my illness, the dialysis sessions, how my family had abandoned me. I didn't want his pity, but I couldn't hide it. Jasper listened, his hands clenched, his eyes darkening as I spoke about my parents, Zach and Lily. "They don't deserve you," he said, his voice firm, "but I'm here and I'll help you through this." Jasper moved like a storm. The next day, he returned to the hospital with a team of lawyers and financial advisors. He introduced me to a charity specializing in transplant costs, and he personally donated a large sum to ensure I was prioritized. "I've contacted top doctors," he said. "They'll find a compatible donor for you as soon as possible." I looked at him, unable to believe it. "Jasper, I can't accept all this," I said, my voice choking. But he cut me off. "You gave me everything when I had nothing, now it's my turn." He didn't just help with medical costs. Jasper saw my rundown rented room. He'd driven there to pick up my things and decided I couldn't live there anymore. "Ethan, you need a better place to recover," he said. He found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood near the hospital with windows overlooking a park and a fully equipped kitchen. "I'll cover the rent until you're better," he said, leaving no room for refusal. I wanted to protest, but standing in the new apartment, smelling fresh paint and feeling warm sunlight on the wooden floor, I could only nod, tears silently falling. Jasper did even more. He hired a private nurse to care for me after dialysis sessions, ensuring I ate properly and rested enough. He brought meals from restaurants, not instant noodles or leftover sandwiches, but dishes I'd never dared dream of. Steak, fresh salads, even a bottle of non-alcoholic wine to celebrate, as he put it. "You need to live, Ethan," he said, smiling. "Not just survive." In the new apartment, I started to feel a change. I met neighbors, not patients, but regular people with simple stories. There was Sarah, a retired teacher who brought over homemade cookies. There was Mike, a bicycle repairman who loved telling tales of his rides across New Jersey. They didn't know about my illness, but they greeted me every morning, invited me for coffee, and made me feel like part of this world. Jasper visited on weekends, shedding his suit, sitting on my small sofa, and we talked like old times. He shared stories of his early startup days, near bankruptcies, and how he always thought of me when things took off. "You were the first to believe in me," he said, his eyes shining. "I promised I'd pay you back, and now I'm keeping that promise." Thanks to Jasper, I was enrolled in a special transplant program. Just a few weeks later, I got news that they'd found a compatible donor, someone ready to give me a chance at life. I sat in my apartment reading the letter, my hands shaking. A transplant, a new beginning. I called Jasper, my voice choked. "I've been selected," I said. He laughed loudly over the phone. "I knew you'd make it, Ethan. I'll be there for your surgery." But amid the joy, I couldn't help thinking of my family. I hadn't contacted them since leaving the hospital. They hadn't reached out either. Part of me wanted to call, to tell them about Jasper, the transplant, the new apartment. But I stopped. I realized I no longer needed their validation. Jasper, Sarah, Mike. These strangers had become my new family, not by blood, but through genuine care. Jasper showed me I deserved to live, not for what I did, but for who I was. The surgery was scheduled a few months later. Jasper promised to fly back from New York to be there. "I'm not leaving you alone," he said, and I believed him. The night before the surgery, I lay in bed, watching moonlight stream through the window, feeling a strange peace. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I had Jasper, my new apartment, a chance to start over, and I knew no matter what, I'd never go back to being my own shadow. The day of the kidney transplant arrived, and I lay in the hospital bed, my heart pounding. Not from fear, but from a strange feeling, as if I were standing at the greatest crossroads of my life. The operating room was cold, the white lights blinding, and the sharp smell of antiseptic made me slightly dizzy. But in that moment, I didn't think about death, the months of dialysis, or the pain. I thought of Jasper, who had pulled me out of the darkness, and I told myself, if I make it through today, I'll live differently. I'll live for myself and for those who truly value me. As the nurse wheeled me into the prep room, I glanced down the hallway, hoping to see a familiar face. But there was only Jasper, standing there in his familiar gray suit, his smile warm but his eyes worried. Beside him was Hank, my boss from the repair shop, wearing his old flannel shirt, hands in his pockets, looking out of place in the hospital. "You've got this, Ethan," Jasper said, gripping my hand so tightly I could feel his strength. Hank just nodded, his voice gruff. "Hang in there, kid. I bet you're tougher than that excavator at the shop." I laughed, though my throat tightened. They weren't my family, but they were here, and that was enough to give me a sliver of courage as I entered the operating room. The surgery lasted 6 hours. I don't remember much, only waking to dim light filtering through a window and the steady beeping of machines. A dull pain throbbed in my abdomen where the incision was, but it wasn't frightening. It was proof I was alive. The doctor came in smiling. "The surgery was a success, Ethan. The new kidney is functioning well. If everything stays on track, you'll recover quickly." I nodded, my mind still foggy from anesthesia, but a wave of relief I'd never felt before washed over me. I was alive. I truly had a chance to start over. Jasper and Hank stayed at the hospital all day. Jasper brought coffee and a sandwich from a nearby deli, insisting I eat despite my lack of strength. Hank told corny jokes about the repair shop, trying to make me laugh. Neither mentioned my family, but I knew they noticed their absence. When I asked Jasper, "Has anyone called?" he shook his head, his eyes sad. "No, Ethan, but you've got us." I nodded, swallowing the sharp pang in my chest. My family had chosen not to be here, even on the most important day of my life. Recovery wasn't easy. The first few days I was so weak I couldn't sit up on my own. The incision hurt with every movement, and the medications made me nauseous. But Jasper didn't let me face it alone. He arranged for a private nurse, called every day, and even flew back from New York on weekends to check on me. Hank visited when he could, bringing stories from the shop and once a new baseball cap, saying, "You need something to cover that messy head of yours." I laughed, for the first time in months, feeling like a normal person, not just a patient. When I was strong enough to return to my apartment, Jasper had everything ready. My small apartment now had a comfortable armchair and a fridge stocked with food. He even installed an app on my phone to track my medication schedule and remind me to rest. "You have to take care of yourself, Ethan," he said, his voice serious. "I didn't do all this for you to collapse again." I nodded, unable to say anything but, "Thank you." The word felt too small for everything Jasper had done. But then, a few weeks after the surgery, something strange happened. I came across a post by Zach on social media. He was standing next to a red sports car, grinning brightly, captioned, "Welcoming my new friend." I frowned. Zach was a real estate agent, but he'd never made that kind of money. A week later, I saw another post. Zach showing off a new condo with large windows overlooking the city, luxurious furniture, and the caption, "Live big, dream big." A chill ran down my spine. Where was Zach getting this money? He couldn't have earned that much, not that fast. I started digging, not out of curiosity, but because of a bad feeling. I asked a coworker who knew Zach. "He's been bragging everywhere," the guy said. "Talking about closing a big deal, making $200,000 in a single day." I was stunned. $200,000? Impossible. Zach didn't have deals that big. I dug deeper, contacting a close friend of Zach's who'd visited our parents' house a few times during Thanksgiving and Christmas. After some reluctance, he revealed a truth that left me numb. "Ethan, you didn't know," he said, his voice low. "Zach donated a kidney to someone and they paid him $200,000 for it. He bragged to everyone that it was the easiest deal of his life." I sat in my small apartment, feeling like the floor had collapsed beneath me. I knew who he donated the kidney to, and I knew the person who paid him $200,000 was none other than my millionaire friend. Zach, my brother, whose car I'd fixed, whose debts I'd paid, for whom I'd sacrificed everything, had given me a kidney. But not out of love. He'd done it for money. $200,000. I imagined Jasper, desperate to save me, negotiating with Zach, paying a price to convince him. I thought of my parents, of Lily, and wondered, Did they know? Did they agree to this, see me as a commodity to be traded? Pain surged, not from the incision in my abdomen, but from my heart. I'd known my family was selfish, but this was the final blow. Zach hadn't donated his kidney out of love, but because Jasper paid him. He'd turned my life into a transaction. I wanted to scream, to call and confront him, to ask how he could treat me this way. But I didn't. I just sat there, hands clenched, tears silently falling. I called Jasper that night. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice trembling. He was silent for a moment, then sighed. "I didn't want to hurt you, Ethan. I begged your family, but they refused. Zach was the only one who agreed, but he demanded money. I had no choice. I just wanted you to live." Gratitude and pain intertwined within me. I was more grateful to Jasper than ever. He hadn't just given me a kidney, but a chance to see the truth about my family. But that truth hurt more than any incision. I didn't blame Jasper. He'd done everything for me, even stooping to negotiate with Zach. But I couldn't forgive my family. Not this time. I decided to change. After fully recovering, I quit my job at the repair shop. Hank didn't object. He understood. "You deserve better, Ethan," he said, clapping my shoulder. I started an online course in counseling for chronic illness patients. I wanted to help people like me, those who felt invisible, who fought alone. I wanted them to know they weren't alone. I wrote one letter to my family just once. "I forgive, but I don't forget," I wrote. "Thank you for showing me I need to live for myself." I sent it and cut off all contact. I didn't want explanations or apologies. They'd chosen their path and I'd chosen mine. Jasper stayed by my side. He invested in a small project of mine, an online support group for kidney failure patients. "You'll do great, Ethan," he said, echoing the words I'd told him 8 years ago. And for the first time, I believed in myself. For the first time, I saw a future beyond dialysis sessions, exhausting shifts, or sacrificing for others. I saw a new Ethan, no longer a shadow, but a man with dreams and purpose. My project started small, just a simple website where kidney failure patients could share their stories, find encouragement, and learn how to care for themselves. I spent hours after recovery building it, learning to write content, manage forms, and respond to every message from strangers who felt closer than my family ever had. There was Amy, a 24-year-old newly diagnosed with kidney failure, who wrote that she was so scared she couldn't sleep. I replied, sharing my journey, and she messaged back, "Thank you, Ethan. You make me feel less alone." Those simple, heartfelt words were like medicine for my heart. Jasper didn't just provide financial support. He introduced me to people in the tech industry, helping me expand the project. A nonprofit in New York offered additional funding, and soon my support group had a mobile app connecting patients directly with counselors and doctors. I started getting invited to speak at conferences, sharing my story, from a mechanic in Millville to a survivor inspiring others. The first time I stood before a crowd holding a microphone, my voice trembled, but seeing the attentive eyes, I knew I was doing the right thing. My life slowly became brighter. I no longer lived in a cold rented room or ate instant noodles to save money. The small apartment Jasper rented for me was now filled with new keepsakes, a painting from my neighbor Sarah, a bicycle Mike fixed for me to ride in the park, and a photo of me and Jasper smiling brightly at the app's launch. I started taking care of myself, eating healthier, doing gentle yoga on my doctor's advice. The scar on my abdomen, a remnant of the transplant, was no longer a reminder of pain, but proof I'd overcome. But as my life blossomed, I heard my family was falling apart. An old friend from Millville told me Zach, after blowing through the $200,000 from his deal with Jasper, had spiraled into debt. He'd bought a fancy car, a new condo, and lived lavishly as if the money would never run out. But his real estate deals kept failing, and soon his assets were repossessed. My parents were struggling too. They sold the old house, moved to a smaller rented apartment, and my mom worked extra hours at the supermarket despite her failing health. I knew it was only a matter of time before they'd come to me for help. And then one day my phone buzzed. It was my mom's number. I stared at the screen, my hand hesitating. It had been nearly 2 years since the letter I'd sent. I didn't answer the call, but she texted, "Ethan, are you okay? We want to see you. The family's struggling. Can you help?" I read the message, feeling like my heart was being squeezed. Help? After everything they'd done or failed to do? I didn't respond. A few weeks later, they showed up at the hospital where I was giving a talk to encourage kidney failure patients. When I opened the door, there they were, my parents, looking aged, their hair grayer, eyes sunken. Zach stood behind them, no longer the confident man, just a tired figure in an old hoodie. Lily was beside him, clutching her bag, eyes on the floor. "Ethan," my mom said, her voice trembling. "Are you okay? We want to apologize." My dad nodded, his voice hoarse. "Son, we were wrong. We want to make it right." Zach looked at me, his eyes a mix of shame and desperation. "Bro, I messed up taking money from Jasper. I didn't think it'd turn out like this." I stood there looking at them, the people who'd once been my entire world. I wanted to believe them, to hug them and say everything would be okay. But then I remembered the hospital days, their half-hearted texts, the times they'd abandoned me. I remembered Zach selling his kidney not for brotherly love but for money. I remembered how they'd lived on as if I didn't exist, and I knew I couldn't go back. I smiled, a small but resolute smile. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice calm. "But I can't help anymore. I've given too much and now I need to live for myself." My mom broke into tears, my dad bowed his head, and Zach and Lily said nothing. I walked away, leaving the people I'd once considered my world behind. I leaned against the hospital hallway, taking deep breaths, feeling both pain and relief. For the first time in my life, I'd chosen myself. Since that encounter with my family at the hospital, I haven't contacted them again. I heard they're still struggling, but I no longer feel responsible for saving them. I'd done that for too long, and now I needed to save my strength for those who truly deserved it. The patients in my community, friends like Jasper, Hank, Sarah, and Mike. They were my new family, not bound by blood but by humanity. One afternoon, I drove to the beach near Millville, where waves lapped gently at the shore and the sunset painted the sky a brilliant orange. I stood there, feeling the sea breeze caress my skin, the sunlight illuminating the small scar on my abdomen, the mark of my transplant, the mark of my rebirth. Jasper stood beside me, tossing a pebble into the sea, then turning to me. "You okay, Ethan?" he asked, as he always did. I smiled, feeling whole for the first time. "I'm okay," I said. "Jasper, sometimes what we need isn't a family. It's choosing who our family will be." He nodded, saying nothing, but I knew he understood. I looked out at the sea where the sun was slowly sinking and thought about the message I wanted to share. Life isn't about what you sacrifice, but what you choose to hold on to. I'd once lived to please others, to be their shadow. But now I chose to live for myself, for those who saw my worth and for those I could help with my heart, not blind sacrifice. I am Ethan Cooper, and I've found my true family, not in blood but in hearts that resonate with mine.